Question.
All right.
Jim,
the audience gets their turn.
I think an appealing feature of your proposal is that this is something that could make sense in the United States. So I want to ask you whether you feel that you're getting some traction there. I'm a fossil fuel tax enthusiast myself, and I argued this in a panel in the United States a few years ago. And then Glenn Hubbard said, Gunnar seems to be forgetting that here in the United States, the word tax is a 4-letter word. So have you avoided that by choosing the word fee? And are you getting any traction in the United States? Because I think that is key.
Yeah, we actually are getting some traction. You know, I had a meeting with Grover Norquist, and I don't know if you know anything about American politics, but he's kind of the leader of the no tax increase, and he's managed to impose his will on the Republican Party by campaigning against any Republican who voted for a tax increase and successfully defeating them in the primaries. So he's very powerful. And he, however, understands, he's an intelligent guy, and he understands the argument that if conservatives continue to deny the reality of the climate problem, that as Mother Nature makes it clear that it's not a hoax, that it's going to cause the public to demand a response. And that's the worst nightmare for conservatives. They don't want the government solving the problems, because that means more taxes. And so, as a result, after meeting with him and having breakfast with him and lunch with him and his wife, he actually came out with a public statement that said a carbon tax is okay if it's balanced by an equal reduction in some other tax. And then within less than 24 hours, he had to withdraw that statement because the conservative think tanks really attacked him. And it's clear they were responding to the people who provide the big funding to the conservatives. So there was a temporary retreat there. However, George Shultz, who was the Secretary of State under Ronald Reagan, has written an editorial in the Wall Street Journal saying that we need to have a carbon tax and it should be revenue neutral. And in particular, he likes the fee and dividend idea. So we're getting some traction, and there, I think, and I think we must have agreement from conservatives in order to get something to happen. So I think there's progress, but we're still not quite there yet.
Great, thank you. So now what I'm going to do is open the floor to people waiting in the warm room to be able to ask a question. And what is very important for you to know is that right now what is happening is being filmed and put out on the internet, streaming, and will be available later on the internet. So if you ask a question, yeah, your voice will be heard by millions. So it's important that you are taking note of that. Also very important, remember that there are a lot of exciting questions we could ask Jim Hansen, but right now we're talking about fee and dividends, so focus your questions around that. And also that we'll have time after the break for more open discussion in this room. So try to keep your questions brief and focus towards Jim. Great. Does anyone have a question? Here. This is your chance. Grab it. Anyone? You want to? Yeah, but we're getting there. Okay, now we're coming. So wait, we have someone over there, and then we had someone over here. Did we?
First.
I didn't see who that was. Over there. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Andrew Svinnereim, and I'm on the City Council in Bergen. So I think this is an intriguing idea for the US. I have one question about predictability of the price into the future, because I think it's key that investors know what the price of carbon will be. or that there will be a price of carbon in the future. And my worry is that it is really hard to know what that price should be. How do you set a good price? And if it turns out not to be so good, maybe people get richer so they can just pay it and not change their behavior. Or maybe they get poor and go bankrupt. How do you adjust the price? And if you do adjust the price, then how will it be predictable? Thank you.
Could you hear the question?
Yes. Yeah, well, the price eventually will need to be quite high. We know that. We also know that we've done economic modeling has been done in the United States to see what the effect would be, and if we use the tax that was proposed by John Larson, a congressman, which was $15 a ton, going up $10 a ton each year for 10 years, then at the end of 10 years, it's $1 a gallon of gasoline. So it's still not high compared to the European cost of petrol, of taxes on petrol. But yet it reduces American carbon emissions by 30%. So I think the important thing is that you want to have continued pressure to raise that rate. And if 65% of the people are getting more in the dividend than they're paying an increased price, there will be the continued pressure to raise that rate. And that's what we have to have in order to phase out fossil fuels, which we need to do over a time frame of decades. So it's hard to say exactly what the rate should be, but the important thing is that it needs to continue to rise, and it needs to get started.
Thank you so much. Other questions in the room? Please just poke your hand up high so we can see. Who was it over there?
I sneak mig in here.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Keith, sneak in.
Could I sneak in, because I think the progress, how is the progress of the tax in or the fee and dividend in the US is interesting, but how would it be on a state level in the US?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, let me say two things about that. The one thing is, with regard to progress in the U.S., there's this organization called Citizens Climate Lobby, and that organization is growing very rapidly and now exists in almost every state in the United States, and it's beginning to exist in other countries, especially Canada, for example. And I think that it's important as a means of educating the public about this. There will be a variation from state to state, and it's like I'm actually hoping that we may get some state in the U.S. to institute its own carbon fee. Now, it can't go very high before it would begin to disadvantage that state relative to the others. But still, up to a certain level, it would be feasible. But that remains to be seen. But there is a very rapidly increasing number of people who are beginning to understand this.
Great, thank you. Nils Tore?
Yeah, Nils Tore, Director of Naturvernforbundet in Hordaland. Before this meeting, you mentioned you've been in contact to people in the European Commission about introducing this in Europe. Would you see that there would be a way to get the system to be operated on a European Union level, or is it more things which has to be implemented in each national states within the European Union?
Well, I think it would have to be done by the Union in order not to disadvantage some countries, the industry in some countries relative to industry in other European countries. But it's recognized that it's not easy to get agreement among all the European countries. And one idea that was mentioned when I met with Ann Glover was to have some talks about this at in Brussels to try to get the economists to support this. But yeah, I see it. It's not easy in European Union because the individual countries have not given up their authority. But that's why it would be nice to have some European country just show that it might work.
That's our call to arms. So we have time for one more question with Jim before we take a break. Is there anyone in the room who has a burning question they haven't had a chance to put forward? Yeah.
Yeah.
Halvor. Yeah.
Please stand up.
Yeah. Go ahead. Stand up and. Yes.
Okay. I think this proposal for fee and dividend is one of the most general parts of it is in fact the dividend part, I think, because it makes it much more easy to create popular support for it. It seems to me that it would be possible to make a campaign, maybe even a global campaign for this. But if you remove the dividend part and use it in one country for this and one country for that, the whole thing falls apart, it seems. But I know that the leader of this 350.org organization, Bill McKibben, he is supporting this cause, but the organization itself doesn't seem to focus on this. How do you view the possibilities of creating really a campaign on this whole thing? And how important is the dividend part? Although it's not really the European, it's kind of American, but I think maybe it's the really main thing here.
Yeah, well, my feeling is that the dividend part is extremely important. I know that it is essential in the United States, but I think, the failure of Australia to keep its carbon tax is because of the fact that there's no dividend. Yeah, we have to get a campaign that is wider, and Bill McKibben, yeah, I know he agrees that this is really important, and perhaps 350 can be part of that campaign. But I think the Citizens Climate Lobby, which hopefully can become more international, and that might be a way to get more people to understand it.
Okay. What is the website for Citizens Climate Lobby? If people here are interested in
it's citizensclimatelobby.org.
Okay.
One word, no apostrophe in it, just citizensclimatelobby.org.
Right. Well, we have people starting to want to poke their hands up here on stage, the politicians, the economists, but I think we have to let you go since you've so generously given us your time. Also because this room is heating up considerably with so many people in it. We need a little breathing break. But this has been absolutely fantastic to have you with us. We really, really appreciate your time and the thoughtfulness with which you've engaged with the questions, and hope that we'll stay in future contact.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. Thanks very much.